entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you were here?
No, not really. Greetings, friends. What's going on? I've just got back from the very first showing of Gladiator 2 at my local cinema, and to cut to the chase, it failed to live up to the original.
Well, imagine my surprise.
But more importantly, it's failed men and masculinity. Allow me to explain, but just before I do, let's remind ourselves of the original movie, shall we? You remember that, right? The original Gladiator had a solid story, the dialogue was competent, it had suitably resplendent sound design, it was almost entirely practically shot, Steadicams and Russian arms weren't built the same back then, and I absolutely love it. The turbulent jankiness complements the fact it's shot on film beautifully. It's raw, it's unpolished, as is the setting. It's very fitting. Those old Arri cameras give it that earnest analog look that has become synonymous with a fulfilling Saturday night. The shot composition is fairly typical, but the costumes, set dressings, and general sense of theatre make up for a lack of flamboyance in that regard. You won't find any Dutch angles in this Italia. It's basically John Wick circa 200 AD, and that's fabulous. There's almost enough John Wick movies to make a legion, so a Gladiator sequel should be an open goal, right? Well, not exactly. The problem with the original Gladiator movie is that it's far too masculine. And it's far too pleased to be so. The story of Maximus waters the very roots of male nature. The idea that a man would find a way to overcome and or sacrifice anything and everything, including himself, for the sake of his family and honour. The staunch friendship and loyalty that men are capable of. Compassion and camaraderie. The original Gladiator explores almost every facet of masculinity and the consequences inflicted upon us by those who cower from it. This is, of course, completely forbidden by today's modern dogma. I mean, what? You want to make a movie? Bolstering and celebrating raw testosterone, painting masculinity as an incontestable force for good. Ha! Don't make me laugh, you bastard! Yes, unfortunately, unadulterated masculinity was lost to the riptide of modernity a long time ago, I'm afraid. Even if he could still make good films, Ridley Scott set himself an impossible task. A movie with themes that simply cannot be allowed to exist in today's environment. And like I mentioned, the original committed the cardinal sin of not only promoting masculinity, but also warning us of men who do not possess and or strive for masculinity. Absent fathers, the desperate need for affection and approval that can often cripple men, and the fickle arrogance and betrayal that some are capable of. Throughout the movie, masculinity is painted as a source of strength and redemption. Hell, even the slave driver embraces masculinity when the time comes and dies with honour. But never mind that, because this is the 21st century, and we of course cannot have nice things, and also man bad. Don't be a man. Bad man, man. Don't be a man, bad man. And talking of Ridley Scott, what happened? Alien, Blade Runner, Gladiator, the guy was batting, and now he's going the way of the Tim Burton. He has the same story arc as Coldplay. I couldn't even force myself to finish watching two of his latest movies, the absolute snooze fest that was Napoleon, and don't even get me started with The Last Duel. Thank God that duel was the last. It took me 3 sittings to get halfway through, and even then I ended up giving up.
It vexes me. I'm terribly vexed.
And that brings us on to the sequel, and if I could explain Gladiator 2 in one sentence, it would be this one sentence from Gladiator 1.
You have a great name. He must kill your name before he kills you.
So, come and sit upon my lap and let's discuss why Gladiator 2 Electricus Boogalooicus was so disappointing. And it kicks off with like an animated, painted recap of the first movie, and the very first person we see on screen, it's not Maximus, it's not Marcus Aurelius, it's not Commodus. It's that one female gladiator from the original that was on screen for all of, what, like 10 seconds? The second I saw that, I knew exactly what I was in for. That Hollywood inclusion chart is getting ticked off real quick. So the sequel takes place 16 years after the events of the first film, and it kicks off on a farm somewhere in North Africa, and the very first live action shot of the movie is the protagonist being scolded by his wife for, and I quote, not being gentle enough. And just before you can say, wow, Johnny, that's pretty stunning and brave, it turns out that this couple not only farm together, but fight together as well. That, yes, she's also a soldier. because of course she is. And on the eve of battle, this same woman is refused the right to make an offering, unlike all of her fellow male soldiers, because we need to smash the patriarchy or whatever. But of course, we couldn't have a 2,000-year-old battle scene without having a woman join in as well. Thank you, Gladiator 2. Very cool. But funnily enough, this female warrior uses a bow and arrow and misses all but one shot that she makes while she's on screen. What are you trying to say, Ridley, huh? And I'm not sure how to put this other than hyper-polished modern filmmaking just doesn't lend itself to historical battle scenes very well. It's too clinical, too stable, too clean, everything that a battle is not. Then, to his horror, the protagonist's wife dies in battle because, of course, I mean, she didn't die at home with the kid like in the original movie. Boring. She don't need no man. She died in war because...
Yes! Queen! Slay!
It's also worth noting that a character has yet to be properly established, so we just do not care that his wife's died. We know essentially nothing about anyone. And the only thing we do know is that the protagonist isn't as gentle as he could be. So yeah, it's not quite enough to make us care, so it's already trailing behind the original. To make things even more modern and stunning and brave, Pedro Pascal's character, General Acacius, is then ashamed that he won the battle. Good job you work in the military then, mate. The first movie is centered around the fragility of Commodus being an existential threat to the Roman Empire and Maximus putting an end to that whilst also avenging his family. Meanwhile, the sequel is about a dirty man in the desert who goes on a remarkably violent gap year. Yeah. Oh, and also there's freakish CGI demon monkeys in this one. Did I mention that? Maximus stood for what is just. This protagonist stands for just farming and, quote-unquote, not being gentle enough and nothing else. There are just no stakes in this movie. Also, rage pours out of you like milk from a tit is an actual quote from this movie. Now, I'm not going to claim to be any sort of breastfeeding expert, but I'm pretty sure milk doesn't pour from a tit. It's not like emptying a 2-pinter of milk. I think it's a slightly more gradual process than that. So not only is that quite a strange thing to say, it also doesn't make any sense. Acacius then has a struggle session with his wife because he's a cock and doesn't like war. Remind me why this guy is a general again? In the original, and yes, you're going to hear that quite a lot, the main driving force behind Maximus's revenge is the betrayal of Commodus and the fact that he ordered the killing of Maximus's family. Meanwhile, the protagonist in Gladiator 2 wants to avenge his wife by hunting down the man who didn't kill his wife, but was stood next to the man who killed his wife. And the reason that man killed his wife is because his wife tried to kill the man that he's now hunting to avenge his wife who wasn't killed by that man. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. The original was also very raw and definitely lent into realism to great success. It felt genuine. It felt like a piece of history. The sequel, however, is way too Hollywood, way too dramatized. At one point in the Colosseum, a guy is impaled by this charging rhino and just explodes in this cloud of blood and is then flung across the Colosseum, and you are immediately reminded that you sat there watching a movie. Immersion spoiled. The entire introduction sequence of the original establishes Maximus as a hero of Rome, so when he's discovered to be a gladiator, it's no surprise that the crowds love him and begin cheering for him. Meanwhile, in the sequel, the people of Rome love the protagonist, and I'm calling him the protagonist, by the way, because throughout the movie he's given about 700 different names. Everyone in Rome loves him. They're cheering for him in the Colosseum because, and get this, he threw dust at a rhino. I wish I was joking. That's genuinely it. He's not said a word at this point. He has commanded no armies. No one knows who he is. He just threw a little bit of dirt at a rhino and now they can't get enough of him. They're screaming for him. It's absurd. And just a quick warning, I am going to be getting into, a fairly big spoiler. So if you don't want anything in this movie spoiled, just skip 20 seconds ahead. You ready? Okay, so in the first movie, Lucilla sends her son away because she fears for his life. And in this, we discover that she sent him to North Africa. Yes! Sending someone to North Africa because you're concerned about their safety is the same as burning your house down so you don't have to worry about people breaking into it. The motives of most of the characters are completely cooked. Why? Why is the protagonist doing any of this? Why is he going on this journey? I have no idea. He took his wife into battle with him. His wife died in battle, so he chases down a guy that didn't kill her. It's literally more his fault than the guy that he's hunting. Here's a tip. Don't take your wife to war with you, then you don't have to worry about the prospect of featuring in a lukewarm sequel to a once great Hollywood movie. And then, at the climax of the movie, both opposing armies are just stood around listening to this protagonist. Why does anyone care? He was just the barbarian moments before. All he's done is kill a few people. That's literally it. He said a couple of sentences to his mother, killed a few people, and now entire armies are sitting down listening to his story times. I just don't get it. I won't spoil anything else, but man, it's an underwhelming ending. And that's a shame because on paper, the story is a cool idea. I actually really like the principle. It's just a shame about the modern execution and everything around it. Sure, the varnish and violence of this sequel will fool the uninitiated into believing that this is a decent movie, but it's just completely soulless. It lacks any of the burning spirit that made the original great. Gladiator 2 is antithetical to everything that made the first movie iconic. This IP has had a seismic shift in fundamental values. The original teaches us that masculinity, when wielded correctly, is as capable of inspiring an empire as it is capable of felling that same empire. The same cannot be said for its successor. This movie teaches us that men lie, men cheat, men are weak, men are solely vengeful, men are corrupt, and that if you kill enough people, others will listen to you. Oh, and don't forget to smash the patriarchy. This sequel is what the original would have been had it been made today. It's yet another vapid, diluted, morally inverted rehash of something that was good. So once again, I find myself saying, just go and watch the original. You'll have a much better time. You're not missing out on anything. Appreciate you for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one, my friends. And as always, a big shout out to the Patreons and the channel members, especially the top tiers. These are the Knights of Lore. We have Michael Turpia, Posabon, Flunky, Daggerty69, nice, Jax, Koss, Michael Myson, Texas Lawman, ATS, Saint Nemo. I thank you for rejoining again, my friend. It's good to have you around still. Steve the Goat, the Grand Admiral, Jordan96, Patrick Coyne, and ZDN94. To each and every one of the tier 2s and the tier 1s, to everyone on this list, thank you for going out of your way to support me. I really do appreciate it. And there we go. Another day, another video. Will you join me for my next one? You better do, you little bitch. But until then, take care, and I'll see you very soon.